What is happening y'all? Jay here, and today we are looking at all the basic starting classes in Dragon Dogma 2. Now I know there have been many videos on this, but as someone who's played the first Dragon Dogma extensively, we are going to focus on combat and show you all the different skills and augments that you can possess in each class and how they affect your fighting style and help you better choose which class is best for you. So this is an in-depth fighting guide on each of the 4 starting classes. In this video, we are going to cover the fighter, which I'm guessing a lot of you will be choosing, and it's quite a solid pick. So let's go through it in detail, and don't worry if fighter is not your thing, because we will be going through all the other vocations as well in the coming days. So when it comes to the fighter, he's basically the tank in the game. On one hand you'll be holding the shield and on the other you have your sword. But you know what, before I tell you about the skills of a fighter, I want to quickly touch upon 2 points because the combat is quite different from any other RPG, be it Elden Ring or Lies of P. Firstly, there is no lock-on system, so it is vital that you are constantly looking at your opponent that you are trying to hit. And even more importantly, when you are trying to block, because if you're using the shield and not facing your opponent,
somebody gonna get hurt real bad. Somebody.
And the second point is that you as a fighter can grapple enemies. The mage can do it, the strider can do it, but you can. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, it's time to look at all the skills that you can learn as a fighter. And I'm also going to share some of my favorite skills which absolutely devastates enemies. First and probably my most used skill in Dragon Dogma 1, Blink Strike. And this move is going to remind some of you of one other game. In my opinion, this skill is a must-have. Not only does it let you cover long distances, but smaller enemies get flung extremely far. And this can be a really useful thing, as it gives you some time to regain some of that lost stamina. And the upgraded version of this is called Burst Strike, which will flung the enemies even further. Next up on the list, Gorging Spear, where we stab the sword into the enemy, pinning it in one place, and then doing a series of thrust attack. And at this point, the enemy cannot counter or hit you. Next up is the Tusk Toss, and the advanced version is called the Antler Toss, which is nothing but an upward thrust, which can send smaller enemies flying in the air, and it's excellent against airborne enemies. Next, we have the Hindsight Sweep and the Hindsight Slash. In one-on-one combat, I don't think there's any other skill that does more damage than this, where you basically do a quick step back and move ahead and do a devastating blow on your enemy. I mean, if you can master this, it is a must-have. And finally, we have 2 of my favorite skills. One is the Full Moon Slash, where you can just spin around hitting everything around you. Super useful for crowd control. And the icing on the cake, you are invulnerable while you're doing it. Now this next skill is an absolute godsend for a fighter, as a fighter is limited in a way as it won't be able to attack enemies in the air. Fighters will have to either wait for the flying enemies to get lower or wait for the allies to knock them down before really being able to join in on the fight. With this skill, fighters will have at least some aerial options, as this attack will launch them in the air to slash their enemies. Smaller enemies will be knocked down instantly. And it's even great for larger enemies, as the player will have the option to jump higher and hit its weak points. But sword is only one aspect of the fighter class. Equally important for a fighter is defense, and that's where the shield skills come in. Let's start with the basic, the shield summon, which is nothing but you hitting your sword on your shield to attract enemy attention on you. Springboard. Yeah, this can be okay, but only in certain situations. So basically this skill allows you to launch your pawn in the air, and this can be especially helpful against flying enemies. Not to mention, it has a really cool animation. Shield Bash, and the upgraded version is called the Shield Pummel, and this will have players use their shield and slam it on a nearby enemy. Now, while a shield doesn't seem as effective as a sword, this skill has incredible uses. Many enemies in this game have hardened skin, some even made of rocks, and slashing weapons won't deal any damage. Now this skill not only lets players hit these armed enemies, but also gives players a powerful knockback ability. Enemies hit by this skill will be sent flying across the map, which is great for crowd control or launching enemies over a ledge to kill them instantly. Impeccable Guard. This is a newly introduced skill in Dragon Dogma 2. Dragon Dogma 1 had Stone Will. This one though is more of a complete protection which protects the fighter from all sides. And it can be extremely useful to get you out of tricky situations. Now, finally, we need to talk about the augments. Now, these are pretty straightforward. Being a fighter means accepting you'll be receiving a lot of aggro from enemies and you don't want your pawns dying quickly. So the provocation augment makes a lot of sense as it makes sure the heat is more on you. Meanwhile, both metal and thew are no-brainers. Metal increases your defense stats and thew increases the amount of weight you can carry, which is so crucial in this game. So that's about it. All you need to know about what will be the most popular starting class in Dragon Dogma 2. Next up, we have the mage, which is one class you can have a lot of fun with. So if that sounds interesting, a like and a sub would be simply lovely.